Sasuke and Hinata had decided to stop at a roadside inn for a quick meal, break and a chance to talk. While they were used to camping in the wilds, Sasuke wanted a comfortable setting to deal with whatever was going on with Hinata. She sat opposite him with her head bowed, not looking at him. She idly played with a cup of tea in her hand, tilting it this way and that without meaning. "Why didn't you stay?" he asked, trying not to sound accusatory, but Hinata still flinched at the question. Sasuke hadn't seen her this downtrodden since right after her match with Sakura in the tuning exams. "I wanted to stay with you?" Hinata suggested more than answered. She had a small uncertain smile, as if hoping he'd be pleased by her devotion to him. He wasn't. "You don't seem to be very happy to be near me right now," Sasuke said. Hinata opened her mouth to object, but Sasuke silenced her with a glare. 3 years ago, our friends were in great peril. They faced a foe they couldn't defeat and who would kill them if given the chance. At the time, I felt like I had better things to do than help. My mission in life was to kill Itachi. Everything else seemed irrelevant to me. Thankfully for us all, there was a girl with me at the time. She stood up to me. She tried to remind me of what was important, tried to convince me to return and help. And when I refused, that amazing girl went back by herself. She had much more to lose by going back than I. She would either die fighting the monster, or in the very unlikely event that she won, she would then likely be brought back to the Leaf to receive a slave's brand. Yet that amazing girl didn't flinch from the choice she knew was right. I think, looking back at her retreating back, I think that is when I first started to fall for her. Sasuke leaned forward. "Whatever happened to that girl, Hinata? I had my own reasons for abandoning Naruto to her doom. What were yours?" Hinata gulped down her tea and ordered something with more alcohol. "What could I have accomplished without you?" "That didn't stop you before." "Yes, and if you hadn't followed after me, I wouldn't have accomplished anything. I would have died alongside Sakura, Naruto, Shikamaru, and the others. What did my choice truly accomplish?" "It inspired me," Sasuke answered. "Exactly," Hinata answered bitterly. "You are weak, Hinata, and the weak have no business deciding how the world should be. Those were your own words, Sasuke." Now it was Sasuke's turn to flinch away. He had once said something to that effect, hadn't he? He had done it to discourage Hinata to try something stupid against Orochimaru when they were still 13, and maybe encourage her to get stronger. Clearly it hadn't had that effect. "It was you who killed Kimimaru, you who killed Orochimaru, while I went after the crippled henchman. It was you who killed Itachi, while I could be nothing else but your damsel in distress. Yes, I helped you. Inspired you to be a better man, maybe. And that's the point, isn't it? All the good I can do, the influence I have to change things, is measured solely in the influence I have over you, the one with real power." "You are stronger than you think," Sasuke offered hesitantly. There was an air of hard truth and cold logic to Hinata's words that he hated but couldn't outright deny. "I have a realistic idea of my own abilities. Yes, I have grown stronger, but so have the enemies we face. Tell me, if I had charged into the Hidden Rain village without you to rescue Naruto, what would have happened?" "Alone, she would have died," Sasuke knew. "I wouldn't have let you go alone." Hinata laughed bitterly. "Yes, indeed. That is why I matter. My hold on you. I am sorry, my love. It seems that I have failed in my duties as your own personal moral compass." "Is it the alcohol that's doing this?" Hinata's cheeks did look flushed. "And were I secretly hoping that Hinata would push me towards saving Naruto? Is that why I was angry at her?" "Perhaps you are right, or rather, I was wrong too." Sasuke sighed. Why am I upset at you for not doing the right thing when I made the same choice first? It's too late now, Hinata said. Anyway, this isn't about that. Not truly. She didn't continue immediately, and Sasuke gave her time. Time enough to get her thoughts in order and find courage at the bottom of the glass of liquor. All I wanted was to no longer hate myself. It was why I came back to fight Kimimaro. Later, I thought I was fine. But Orochimaru's mark didn't make me a monster. I was a good person. Or so I thought. You are a good person. You're just going through a hard time, Sasuke said, mostly just to make her feel better. He hated seeing her like this. Hinata smiled wanly, showing that she both appreciated the gesture as well as not believing it for a second. You know what my dream is. A quiet life away from all of this trouble. With you preferably. I know there are problems everywhere, but I thought it was fine to ignore it then, so long as I didn't contribute somehow to those problems. I thought I was good enough. Hinata scowled. And then I lost my excuse. Naruto and those with her. It's all their fault, really. They raised the bar of what it means to be a good person. Naruto was at least as powerful as me. You said you believe that it's only those strong people who matter, and you don't count yourself among that number. So why the guilt? Yet what about everyone else? Naruto had many followers who tried to do as she did, and I'd have been able to take most of them in a fight. Yet it didn't stop them from trying to make things better in what little ways they could. Their weakness didn't stop them. And if weakness isn't an excuse for refraining to decide how the world should be, then I have lost mine. And so now I know that I am not a good person. At best, I am not an evil person. At worst, I am a coward who willfully closes her eyes. Hinata buried her face in the table, and Sasuke knew that if he could look at her face now, he'd see tears gathering there. No wonder she was back to the same meek mannerism she had when she was 12. She was facing the exact same issues of low self-esteem as before. And then Naruto made it worse by showing that an impossible path is still worth walking. Indeed, you'd hate the person you'd otherwise be, as I do now. Naruto's words, her nindo, it has touched you deeply, Sasuke said. I owe you much, Naruto, and I abandoned you. Though I might have had a chance to save you, I was probably the only one. Hinata has trouble accepting being simply not evil, yet I might have already reached below that threshold. There is a reason I used to admire her, I guess, Hinata said. Then follow her example, regardless of what I'm doing. If you find the current direction of your life to be unacceptable, then change it. Give up on my dreams of a quiet life with you, you mean? For a life like Naruto's. That is beautiful, glorious, inspiring, and above all, short. Not short. I failed Naruto. I wouldn't do so with you. Sasuke grabbed her hand. I want you to be able to have the life you wish, but I just think you don't even know what that is anymore. Or rather, you gave up on it. Hinata remembered a dream she'd had right before she woke up after the battle against Itachi. Her happy, with Sasuke, in Konoha, with their friends, with her family who was no longer hostile. It had felt so unrealistically perfect that she had known it was a dream and woke up because of it. Impossible. Yet after seeing Naruto's last stand, Hinata started to think an impossible goal might still be worth striving towards. There is something I want to do. The very idea of it already made her feel warm inside. Will you help me? Tell me what you need. Danzo could live for a few more days, Sasuke decided. Sasuke wanted and would try to better the world his own way. But it didn't mean he'd prioritize that over his girlfriend. Sasuke set out alone soon after, while Hinata remained in the roadhouse. In the day it took Sasuke to return, Hinata's vague wishes grew into something that somewhat resembled an actual plan. She didn't leave her hired room much that day, and was mostly pacing back and forth nervously. She had no fear for Sasuke's safety, but she did worry about how he would handle this. She hoped for restraint and delicacy. Sasuke arrived through the window. He rarely used the front door these days, and he was carrying a large burlap sack in his hands. He held the sack far away from himself. Hinata noted that he looked a little worse for wear. His hair was ruffled and there were bite marks on his hands. This actually made her proud. It should also be noted that the burlap sack was moving in a way that indicated it contained a person who didn't want to be there. "Alright," Sasuke said, and untied the sack and held it upside down to deposit its contents on the floor. "One little sister, delivered as requested." Sasuke was immediately forced to sidestep away as a still hand-bound and gagged Hanabi tried to kick at his knees. It was more of a way to show her annoyance with him than any real attempt to do harm. "One-san." Hanabi then addressed Hinata, not looking surprised. She had been in a sack, but that wouldn't have stopped her from scanning her surroundings with her Byakugan. She had spotted Hinata at least a minute before she was released. "Hello, Imoto. How are you?" Hinata felt stupid. She had spent years thinking about what she'd say to Hanabi on the off chance they'd meet again. But now it was all gone and replaced by the most generic, "How are you?" "That depends," Hanabi said blandly. "Am I being kidnapped?" "You have already been kidnapped, but now that you are here, you aren't my prisoner." And Hinata removed Hanabi's bindings. "You are free to go. I just wanted to see you again and talk to you. So much was left unsaid between us." "Oh, I knew it!" Hanabi stood up and almost tackled Hinata in her enthusiasm. She beamed at her. "They've all been saying such awful things about you, but I knew they were lying." "I'll leave you two alone. I need you to go delay your wannabe rescuers." "Do not hurt them," Hanabi said in as commanding a tone as a 30-year-old could muster. "More challenging that way," Sasuke responded, and then he was gone. "When you do come to rescue me, you should come as well. We'd love to get you back." Hinata smiled wryly. "No doubt, but I think your reasons for wanting me back are unique amongst the Hyuga clan. We just need to show them that they were wrong about you." "No, Hanami-chan, I am not going back, not ever." And then Hinata remembered a dream she'd had. "It would take a miracle," she amended. "Father has been having a lot of trouble since you left. They blame him for losing you." "Good," Hinata said, causing Hanabi to look at her in shock. She loves him, Hinata realized. Truly, little sister, you are the better daughter. Please, Hanabi, our time is short and I don't want to spend it talking about what cannot be. I brought you here to see how you are doing and to give you an explanation to which you are owed. And finally, to ask for your help. Hanabi's eyes briefly fell on Hinata's headband, which she still carried around her neck. Its scratched-through leaf symbol marked her as a rogue ninja. A traitor. I can't be involved in anything that would go against Konoha's interests. Nor would I ask such a thing of you, but all that can wait at least a little bit. And she sat down on the floor. First, please tell me, how have you been really? Do any of our branch houses give you mean looks? Does Neji? Did you make friends in the academy? Do you have a good Jonin sensei? How is your team? Are you being involved in the war? How are you really? Hinata motioned and Hanabi went to sit next to her. Before her departure, Hanabi and Hinata were often forced to compete against each other. But there was a time before that. A time that Hanabi now barely remembered. when they were allowed to play together. Sitting like this with her big sister brought up half-forgotten memories of the two of them huddled together under a single blanket on a cold winter's day. It made Hanabi lean against Hinata, and she, remembering that time much more clearly, threw an arm around her. Well, I'm fine, really. Father tried very hard to not let me be involved in the war, but my friends are all out there. He can't stop me from going. I want to protect my home. Hanabi's eyes were again drawn to Hinata's rogue headband. Can you understand that, Nei-san? Of course I can. You fight to protect that which is precious to you. That's when you're at your strongest. Hinata spared a brief thought towards that effeminate boy who had told her that years ago in Wave. And we weren't precious to you. Is that why you left? I left because staying would mean that me or you, probably me, will be branded with a cursed seal. You have to have noticed the problems within our clan, or do you approve of that practice? I try to focus on the good things about our family and not the bad. We are still family, and we do look out for one another. Or at least I try. Well, now I'm even more glad that I left. You're a much better heir to our family than I. And if I'm the next set, will you come back, Fan? I promise you won't be branded. I won't allow it. I don't know, Imoto. You are the only tie to the Hyuga clan that I really care about. The rest I wouldn't bother. And there are other issues as well. Me and your Okage aren't on good terms right now. Or they wouldn't be once she helped Sasuke in killing him. That did tend to sour relationships. And afterwards, she doubted she could ever come back to Konoha again. I can't promise we'll see each other again after today. So let me say it now so I'll never regret that I didn't. I love you, Imoto. Hanabi ducked her head in embarrassment, her cheeks glowing red. I love you too. Hinata sighed happily. That was the most important business taken care of. Now I think it's time to tell you what I need your help with. Though in truth, it's more that I am offering you an idea, a suggestion, for you to act on or ignore. After what she heard from Hanabi, Hinata believed it should be entirely Hanabi's decision. Hinata shared her plan and Hanabi didn't need a lot of convincing. They spent what time they had left catching up. Hinata talking about her time and studies during her stay with Orochimaru, and later her training after being restored by Zetsu. Not in as much detail since Hinata had to be mindful that whatever she shared might end up in the hands of those who wished her ill. Hanabi shared some stories about her time in the academy. Naturally, she had been at the top of her class. All too soon, Sasuke showed up, signaling that their time was over. Any longer and they might suspect just how outmatched they are. If you want to make it seem like we lost Hanabi, not on purpose, she has to go now. Hinata gave Sasuke a smoldering look. Enemies have been trying to steal main branch Hyuga members to steal their bloodline long before even the founding of the great villages. And here Sasuke essentially managed it barely a day after Hinata asked it of him. And the only reason they could track him was that he allowed it. It wasn't just that he had done it for her, but every woman liked competency in her man, and Hinata was no exception. Hanabi noticed the look and looked from Hinata to Sasuke and back again. And finally, narrowed her eyes at Sasuke. And who are you supposed to be? Of course Hanabi knew who this was, but the question still felt appropriate somehow. Hinata had talked about Sasuke's role in her leaving Konoha, but hadn't mentioned that they were more than friends. Sasuke noticed the glare he was receiving and immediately realized the reason behind the sudden hostility. He decided to have a bit of fun with this. He strode forward and grabbed Hinata behind her back and head and then pulled her into a deep kiss. It was a very one-sided kiss, as Hinata couldn't decide whether to push him away because not the time, or lean into it because yes. After releasing the now slightly dazed Hinata, he smirked at Hanabi, whose mouth hung open and was going open and close like a goldfish. I am the man who stole your big sister away from you. So it was you! I knew it! You are the real reason One-san won't come home! No, that's not... Hinata tried to protest but went ignored. Yes, I am, Sasuke said, grabbing Hinata around her side and holding her close to him. Well, you can't have her! One-san belongs with me, with her family! Sasuke released Hinata and moved closer to Hanabi, looming over her and chuckled evilly like a cliché manga villain. The only place your sister belongs is in my bed. Hanabi gaped and looked as if she had just witnessed a brutal murder. Hinata meanwhile made a sound that most resembled a dying mouse. You fiend! Hanabi screamed and ran out, pausing in the room's entrance and then pointed a dramatic finger at Sasuke. You haven't seen the last of me, Sasuke Uchiha! The next time I will be much stronger and I will defeat you, and then One-san will finally be free to come home! And then she was gone. Hinata looked imploringly at Sasuke. I wanted her to like you! Sasuke looked very much like the cat who ate the canary. I don't think that's a battle that even I could have won. If you want to clear the air between us, then you'll just have to make sure we'll all meet again. Hinata couldn't stay upset at him after that. Her shoulders dropped and she had a small but heartfelt smile. Thank you. No more moping then? I think so. I feel... lighter. I can't promise I'll have no more regrets, ever. But I do feel less guilty. Hanabi deserved to hear from me. And your plan? Sasuke asked. Is no longer mine. The fate of the Hyuga clan lies solely on Hanabi's shoulders, as it should be. They had to leave after that. They left some extra coins with the manager for the trouble they had no doubt cost him for holding their short-time kidnapping in his building. They fled to another town to rest for the night. When Sasuke ordered 2 rooms for the night, Hinata covered half the money with one of her hands. I never knew you to make an idle statement, Sasuke. Didn't you mention that there was some place I belonged? The smile and look she gave him carried a clear invitation. Not that long ago, Sasuke would have refused. But Itachi had shown them how easily their time together could be cut short. And Pain as well, by defeating Naruto, has shown that even the strongest could fall. If Naruto could be defeated, then so too could Sasuke. Hinata wasn't going to leave him of her own volition, that much was clear by now, so it was pointless to keep her at a distance for her own good, fearing that he might die soon. Itachi and Orochimaru were both gone, or were his original excuses. Somehow, after those two, Danzo didn't feel nearly so threatening. He was done denying himself. They both wanted this, and wasn't today all about making sure there were no regrets? Sasuke turned and said, a single room will suffice. When the news came that Hanabi had been abducted, the entire clan had been set on high alert. Many of their members had been sent out to find her, only to be foiled by Sasuke Uchiha. These Hyuga could at least confirm that he wasn't carrying Hanabi with him at the time, so she was either restrained or passed on to someone else. Many nightmarish scenarios were discussed, such as Hanabi having already been sold to the highest bidder. The Cloud Village was always a big suspect, but hardly the only one. Missives had been sent to many outposts and independent bounty hunter offices, offering huge sums of money for the safe return of the clan heir. Hyuga and Neji had been out on a mission when the news came, accompanied by an order to return to the clan to come and help, or else. It went against the rules to abandon his current post even for this, but when orders came from the main branch to a side branch member, you obeyed. If the Hokage had a problem with that, then Neji would gladly point the finger at Hiyashi and Danzo's own apathy in doing anything about the curse seal. When he returned home, he learned that Hanabi had already escaped by herself. So I came for nothing, Neji said to the elder that gave him the news. His insolent tone and question went fortunately ignored. Hanabi-sama has called a meeting. She says the very survival of the Hyuga hangs in the balance. You are invited didn't need to be said. Even if he wasn't main branch, he was one of their most skilled shinobi, and that carried a certain amount of respect. The meeting was held in the same room where the clan had put Hinata on trial for use of the curse seal on himself years before. Hanabi now stood where Hinata once did. She looked disheveled, like a ninja just returning from a very taxing mission. Hiyashi was already there. Some others weren't, but it seems Neji's arrival had been the thing Hanabi had waited for to begin. Many of you know that I was captured yesterday by Sasuke Uchiha. This was done on the orders of my sister, Hinata. You saw her? Hiyashi asked, and Hanabi nodded. How was she? Hanabi looked pained. Not well, father. The curse mark's corruption hasn't stopped. She has grown even more cruel, I fear. Though she tried to remove me for my own good, I fear there's not much left of the sister I used to love. I see. And Hiyashi couldn't quite hide the pain those words caused him. Even Neji, who still didn't care much for the man, couldn't help but feel sorry for him. How unfortunate. What did you mean by she tried to remove you for your own good? I think a part of her still cares about me, though that didn't stop her from verbally abusing me. She wanted me gone so that I wouldn't end up fighting when they attacked. She really hates us, father. Hates the Hyuga. She wants to destroy us utterly. Well, except for me, possibly. By they, I assume you mean Hinata and Sasuke Uchiha? Hiyashi asked, and Hanabi nodded again. They are two. They cannot stand against our entire clan, even if they could reach us within the walls of Konoha. If they try, we will kill them. You forget, father, that they wouldn't need to fight all of us. Do you remember the last time Hinata was here, in this very room? Why she was here? Some of their audience, particularly the branch members, paled. You don't mean... Yes, we mustn't forget. Hinata is of the main branch. She knows our secrets, knows how to trigger our cursed seal. The moment she comes within range of the clan, she'll use our own techniques to kill most of us. The ratio was that for every main branch Hyuga, there were 9 from branch houses, meaning Hinata could instantly kill 90% of their clan with no effort at all. Neji tried to remember Hinata and wondered if she'd really be capable of that. If it wasn't for that last month before she left, the notion would have been ridiculous. But that last month was there. But Neji is a mere side branch. It is simply not his fate to upstage me. Neji remembered that moment well. He had been sitting in this very room in this very same spot. He remembered the contempt in her eyes and the way she spoke to everyone, including her own father. Like the entire Hyuga clan was some joke that only she could understand. Suddenly, Hinata coming back to kill them all didn't seem so ridiculous. Particularly if Orochimaru's curse seal has only made her worse over time. Then we must hide them. We could talk to the Hokage. Our branch members can hide amongst the Anbu Black Ops. Their anonymity would keep them safe until this is over, someone suggested. We have allies. Are we not part of a hidden village? Let other Leaf Ninja fight them for us, was yet another suggestion. Gentlemen, even if that does work, what if Hinata simply tells others how to work the cursed seal? Will we live in fear of this forever? Hanabi asked. No, there is only one choice before us, and that is to get rid of the cursed seal or condemn the majority of our family to death. Many mothers greeted her proclamation. The cursed seal has kept our family strong, united in purpose, and it has helped us in keeping our amazing eyes out of the hands of our enemies. But my friends, it is a tool that served a purpose. But what if it no longer serves that purpose? When the enemy is using your own techniques against you, it is time to adapt. Hinata doesn't believe we could ever do this. She believes that we are too mired in tradition to change, and is counting on that to defeat us. Everyone, we must prove her wrong. We are stronger than she thinks. We are one of the oldest shinobi clans that exists, as old as the Senju and the Uchiha, and both of those are nearly extinct. We have survived worse than one rogue member. We will show Hinata that all she'll be is one dark stain in our long and successful history. But only if we act now, and do what she believes us incapable of. After that, it was only a matter of time. Promises were given that the branch houses would continue to serve in their social function as servants, but there would no longer be any absolute way to enforce that rule. The possibility was raised of simply reapplying the curse seal after the current crisis was dealt with, but that topic was quietly dropped. It was a meaningless question, for whatever a branch member's true intentions were, they would have answered yes and a promise would have been worthless. They all realized this. Neji himself would never agree to be branded once again after it was removed. Traditionalists they might be, but they were a clan of ninja. Once the decision was made, they acted quickly. When it was Neji's turn, there was a short moment, gone so quickly he thought he might have imagined it, where out of the corner of his eye, he saw Hanabi winking at him. It shouldn't be long now, Danzo thought. Not long before Sasuke Uchiha would come for him. Frankly, Danzo was surprised it had taken him this long. Danzo had spies in Naruto's organization just like everyone else. And so when Sasuke arrived there and told his story and of his new goals, Danzo learned about them soon. If he had still only been the commander of the Root Anbu division, he'd have hidden himself. But he was the Hokage in wartime. Half the time he couldn't even afford to be in the Leaf Village since his presence was required somewhere else. A result of their shortage of truly powerful ninjas after Naruto's defection. Instead, he made sure that part of his Anbu guards always contained a Hyuga so as to give him plenty of warning of approaching threats. At that moment, he was discussing strategy and reports with the Leaf Village's youngest general, Shikamaru Nara. Danzo recognized skill and talent when he saw it, and wasted little time promoting the boy to the point where he could oversee strategies on a grand scale. Danzo's decision soon proved wise. Shikamaru had a knack for obfuscating the true strength of their forces. They couldn't defend all their borders at the same time, so they had to pretend to be stronger than they were. You realize these are just buying us more time, right? Shikamaru asked. Sooner or later, they will do more than just test our defenses and really push. At that point, the charade will end. I urge you to find some way to make peace with the other villages soon. It will be worse the longer we wait. Give up. That seemed to be all the advice everybody had for him these days. There is a new weapon that will enable a new paradigm of sorts in our warfare. If it works, there will be no need to surrender. And if it doesn't? Shikamaru asked. Then I will likely soon be dead, and my successor will probably be less stubborn than I am. You can have your peace then. If Danzo were to hazard a guess, the one most likely to replace him would either be Shikaku Nara or perhaps Might Guy even. The latter was now probably the strongest ninja in Konoha now that Kakashi and Naruto were gone. Danzo tried to picture what a Leaf Village under Might Guy would look like. He envisioned countless Leaf Ninja all dressed up in spandex marching to war to the sounds of Yoof! 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 It was truly terrifying and Danzo shuddered. He absolutely couldn't afford to die right now. Another possibility was that the Fire Daimyo would insist on someone like Kakashi, or Asuma, to repair the relationship between the Leaf Village and the nobility, or rather to make the Leaf Village once more subservient to the Fire Court and their vain interests. His Hyuga Anbu informed him that his expected assassins had arrived. This was of course purely done through sign language. Thank you for all your hard work, Nara-san. I will let you return to your duties. Nothing in Shikamaru's lazy posture betrayed him suspecting that anything special was afoot. Danzo still sent one of his agents to make sure Shikamaru did indeed leave. He used to be friends with Sasuke, so the chances he was in cahoots with him were substantial. If he did anything suspicious, his agents had orders to take him into custody. Not kill. Shikamaru was too valuable, both for his skills as well as politically, to dispose of him like that. Danzo made his way to a prepared battlefield. He always had these prepared wherever he went, ever since Sasuke departed from Naruto's group, which was about 4 days ago now. Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga. They presented a very difficult puzzle to solve. Danzo believed he had a very decent estimation on how strong Sasuke was now. And if his estimation was correct, he'd soundly lose any fair fight with him. That meant he'd need to rely on trickery and deceit, but that ran into the problem of his Hyuga accomplice, who could warn him of most traps. Danzo was old. He had been alive when gods like Madara Uchiha and Senju Hashirama still walked the land. He could still recall their appearance from his youth. He remembered when Hashirama had gone to fight Madara at what would later become known as the Valley of the End. Danzo had been a fresh young chunin at the time, tossed along with dozens of other squads to be the next line of defense should Hashirama fall. They had watched the fight from over 3 miles away, watched these gods do battle. So what do we do if our guy loses? A man named Uchiha Kagami had asked. The Uchiha clan had been completely against Madara at the time. I have no clue, the young Danzo had answered. There could have been 10,000 of them, and it wouldn't matter. It was like asking how many rats it would take to move a mountain. Years later, Danzo knew there was no amount of training he or any of his agents could do to match that kind of power. This idea that you could accomplish anything if you just trained hard enough was just a fairy tale you tell young children to motivate them. And by his estimation, Sasuke Uchiha was slowly knocking on the door of that same bullshit tier of power that contained Madara and Hashirama. He might already be there if Sasuke chose to upgrade to the internal Mangekyo Sharingan, something Danzo suspected he had the means to do. Danzo could live and train for a century more, and he knew he still wouldn't be able to match such a force. Nor could any of his agents. Such was the inherent unfairness of this world. Sasuke Uchiha had done nothing to deserve such potential, besides crawling out of the right womb. There was no use in complaining nor in making excuses, however. Sasuke outclassed them all, and it was still Danzo's responsibility to deal with him. Tsurune, Fu. Danzo spoke in a wireless communication. The Hyuga is your priority target. Alive is preferable but optional. Killing or taking her hostage would enrage the Uchiha. Because of the curse of hatred, this would likely make him even stronger. But when you already lost the power game, giving the enemy more to damage his mental faculties became a worthwhile trade. Hokage-sama, the Uchiha summoned a large chakra construct around himself and is... Danzo didn't hear the rest of it as a huge purple arrow skewered him. His real body even, which had been hiding a few centimeters underground. The clone he had left out in the open went ignored. The deception had been a mere formality, as had been some of the more mundane traps in the area. The Hyuga could see through it all, but it was important to make mistakes like this in order to make the enemy overconfident. Reality rewrote itself as Danzo's corpse vanished and he reappeared standing on the forest ground, one of the 10 Sharingans on his arm closing. Not even stopping to spout some nonsense about vengeance or justice before trying to kill me. My respect for you has gone up, young man. This respect was immediately undercut by Sasuke appearing before him. Where did you get those Sharingan? I took them from your dead relatives after the execution, Danzo admitted easily, and then cocked his head when he saw the hatred in Sasuke's expression. Why wouldn't I? When an enemy shinobi falls in battle, we loot his corpse for usable weapons. Standard doctrine that was taught in the academy even before I improved it. It is not the same, and I think you'll find that my opinion is the only one that matters right now. Would it buy me some leeway if I put them away again? Danzo asked, and immediately started to reapply the bindings on his arm. Sasuke was more confused than anything. They both knew the answer to Danzo's question was no, so I put away one of his best weapons. Just from seeing that one eye on his arm close, Sasuke deduced that he needed those eyes in order to cheat death as he had done when Sasuke's Sasuna arrow pierced him. As soon as the mechanism to seal Danzo's arm was back in place, Sasuke Susanoo flared to life to shoot and end the now vulnerable Kage. Before he could launch the arrow, however, Sasuke stumbled in pain. He felt as if his blood had been replaced by acid. The Susanoo flickered and Sasuke flared his chakra to keep it going, which only made the pain worse. He fell to his knees and the Susanoo vanished. As soon as it did, the pain lessened considerably. Then Sasuke had to deal with Danzo throwing a simple kunai at him. When Sasuke moved chakra to his feet in order to get out of the way, the pain came back, making his movements sloppy. The kunai grazed his cheek and drew blood. Chakra. Whatever this is, it responds to chakra, Sasuke thought. That was why Danzo put the arm away. He can't use chakra either. You set a trap for me. If you wanted your coming to be a surprise, you shouldn't have spent over a month trying to spread the news of my supposed misdeeds. The world needed to know. You are a coward who hides in darkness. How much do the other clans trust you now that they know the truth? To Sasuke's displeasure, Danzo just chuckled. Did you believe they might revolt against me? Are you truly so incapable of seeing anybody's perspective but your own? Did you believe I hid the truth out of fear of public opinion? Your clan planned to launch a coup to take control of the Hidden Leaf Village, kill the third Hokage and place itself in a position of dominance over all the other clans. You think all the other clans disapprove of how we handled a threat like that? They only hated the secrecy, not the decision itself. Secrecy that I never wanted in the first place. It was Itachi who insisted on it. He did it for your sake, to protect the honor of the Uchiha. But you have thrown that away. Now, everyone knows your clan for the traitors they were. The names of your kin have all been removed from the Memorial Stone of Heroes. Their ceremonial graves have been destroyed, and it is all thanks to you. Sasuke looked a mix of horrified and livid. So there you have it, Danzo finished. The result of your precious truth. Sasuke's chakra flared in response to his emotions, and again, it only caused him even more pain. More men were coming out of the forest to surround him. Sasuke had known they were there before, but had dismissed them as a threat. But if none of them could use chakra, there would be a force equalizer, and numbers would start to matter a lot more. This isn't over, Sasuke said, pulling out his sword and attacking Danzo. How could I have missed it? Hinata thought when she saw the trap being sprung. She had hung back in case of just such a trap, and she should have seen it coming. Hinata wasn't a seals master, but she recognized the chakra suppressing seal when she saw one. And for it to affect this large an area, it had to be massive. But she saw no ink or paper anywhere. When the seal again flared after Danzo was finished taunting Sasuke, Hinata saw it. The seal wasn't made out of ink. It was in the unnatural patterns of the rivers, the alignment of the trees, the bushes which weren't where they'd normally be. Somehow, Danzo had converted a whole section of the forest into a seal, made entirely out of natural objects to hide it. It was a very well thought out trap to deal with both Sasuke's power as well as hide it from her eyes. However, Hinata was still outside of it and should be able to break it now that she knew it was there. She just had to disrupt some of the natural patterns that made up the seal. First though, she had to deal with the two enemies that were trying to flank her. They didn't try to hide their approach, knowing she'd spot them anyway. They were fast, almost as fast as Kakashi. Hinata knew she wouldn't be able to win quickly if at all, and Sasuke needed help now. Summoning Jutsu! And a small army of cats appeared at her feet. There was no time to explain in detail what she wanted. All of you, go play in that forest. Don't let the humans catch you and make as much of a mess as you can. That was a command that her kiddies were all too eager to heed, and they raced off. The attacks of the Anbu was perfectly coordinated. The Byakugan helped in fending off multiple opponents, but defending against an attack from the front and back was still hard, even with near 360-degree vision. Hinata tried to remain mobile in order to control the angle at which she faced them, but their teamwork was perfect. Hinata's separation from the Hyuga meant that she wasn't really a true master of the gentle fist. Her focus had recently been more on ninjutsu. However, she was reluctant to use it immediately. Unlike with Sasuke, who was more infamous, these people wouldn't yet know of her abilities, and Hinata wanted to keep it that way until she could leverage it for something decisive. And so, Hinata deliberately didn't fight with all she had and relied only on her proficient if not masterful taijutsu. Against two of Danzo's best agents, the result was predictable. It had been a long time since Sasuke felt this overwhelmed, and he was fighting whom he suspected weren't far above Chunin level ninja. It was humiliating. Without the use of his chakra, his best weapon was his sword. The thing was that even there, Sasuke was no true master swordsman. His sword turned to be another method by which Sasuke channeled his ninjutsu. Without that ninjutsu to augment his kenjutsu, Sasuke remained proficient with his sword, but he wasn't a master samurai by any means. This was in stark contrast to his enemies which were jumping him. All of them carried weapons that they wielded expertly, or they were simply taijutsu experts. Every single one of them had obviously been chosen or prepared to fight under the restrictions they were now all under. Sasuke had no choice but to rely on his Sharingan. The seal he was under didn't actually prevent him from using his chakra. The best way to explain it was that it made his body resistant to its own chakra flow, like the resistance of a metal wire against electricity. The greater the resistance of a wire, the more tension, voltage, or in this case, effort it took to create a current. You could force electricity through a badly conducting wire, but doing so risked damaging that wire by overheating it. And so too could Sasuke still force his chakra to flow, but doing so risked permanently damaging his own chakra pathways. Sasuke found he had to close one of his eyes if he activated his Sharingan, otherwise the strain would be too much. And he had to switch from his right to left and left to right eye repeatedly to not overexert them. And that was just his base Sharingan without using any extra abilities besides predicting the opponent's moves. Sasuke knew that if he tried to force his Mangekyo in this situation, he'd lose his eyes. It was barely enough to keep him alive. There were a lot of enemies, and the difference in power between him and them had been made almost obsolete. All of them had their physical abilities reduced to that of Genin. Furthermore, they all worked well together in surrounding him and attacking him in tandem. Konoha did always pride itself on its teamwork, Sasuke thought as he used ninja wires to pull himself upwards into the foliage. And the most irritating thing was that Danzo refused to risk himself, always staying in the back and at most throwing the occasional projectile at him. Coward. From his high position, he saw that as difficult as he had had it, it could have been worse. Several Leaf Ninja had been distracted by Hinata's cat summons. Why they were even worth chasing, Sasuke didn't know. The cats honestly weren't that suited for combat. The ninjas normally wouldn't have any problems catching them, but they had all been reduced to near Genin level capacities. That made it hard. In fact, more than one of them was currently suffering from a mild case of PTSD, remembering all the times they had to chase the daimyo's wife's cat around for D-rank missions. Kunai with explosive tags were launched at Sasuke's position. They had a lot of those, as those didn't require using anything but the smallest spark of chakra to set them off, and all of them had come prepared. Sasuke himself didn't carry any explosive tags anymore. They just did so little compared to what he himself was capable of under normal circumstances, though he knew Hinata still carried plenty of them. Where is she anyway? Sasuke jumped and snatched two of the kunai out of the air, throwing one at Danzo and the other at some of the ninjas below. Danzo threw a shuriken to intercept and attack exploded harmlessly mid-air. The other enemies just dodged out of the way, which was what he had been hoping for. It gave him room to run away. He hadn't given up on this battle, but he'd definitely choose a different location. His enemies sadly weren't incompetent enough to let him go. One of those chasing the cats got in his way and stalled him enough for the others to surround him again. Pain shot through him as he briefly tried to activate his Susanoo to send all these ants flying. It was a dumb move as it only caused himself harm, but he couldn't help it. All his instincts were wrong. Then, things got worse. Enough, Sasuke Uchiha. Surrender at once. An unfamiliar voice sounded. Sasuke looked and found a man with orange hair holding a kunai to Hinata's throat. Can she not go a single encounter without being taken hostage? Sasuke thought angrily. In that moment, he couldn't help but think Hinata had been right in her assessment that she wasn't suited for this lifestyle. Sasuke, Hinata began, but the kunai was pressed tighter in a clear warning. Sasuke looked in Hinata's eye and was somewhat reassured by what he saw. She didn't look guilty, which he thought would be her reaction to failure. What's your plan, Hinata? I won't ask again. And then both he and Hinata were engulfed in an explosion big enough to kill any normal person. Killing herself to make sure she couldn't be used against you, Danzo said. An act worthy of a true kunoichi. Wakage observed Sasuke, who didn't look like someone who had just seen their love sacrifice themselves. Then, out of the smoke of the explosion, another kunai with yet another explosive tag was thrown at it free and instantly exploded. And in that moment, Sasuke felt the suppression seal fall away. His Susanoo flared to life and instantly sent all the ninjas surrounding him flying, even while Danzo calmly orders, "Retreat." The lesser ninjas on the battlefield all scattered, leaving just Sasuke, Danzo, and a very much alive Hinata. Danzo looked and found that Hinata's skin was burned in several places, but even as he watched, he saw the damaged skin fall away and new skin grow in its place. She's regenerating, Danzo realized. Just like Obito after Zetsu had treated him, Hinata had been implanted with Hashirama cells. Those cells affected everyone a bit differently. For most, it made them a bit stronger and more durable. But, for example, Obito had been given his own unique version of the wood release. One that naturally created spiked and splintered branches where Hashirama's original techniques were smoother. Hinata hadn't gotten the wood release, but what she had gotten was Hashirama's regenerative factor, something that allowed her to easily survive the timed explosion she had placed on her own body. Hinata had gambled that Danzo's agents wouldn't want to kill her immediately, because everyone always seemed to want to take her hostage for some reason. And just as planned, they had restrained her and brought her into the seal to use against Sasuke, placing her in the perfect position to destroy the pattern once she broke free. "Thanks, you really saved my hide there," Sasuke said, inordinately pleased by the chance to praise her in this situation. He'd be able to remind her of this moment the next time she doubted her own worth. Also, he wasn't lying. He certainly hadn't come up with a plan to get out of the trap himself just before she appeared. "I do have my moments," Hinata said, giving a smile of immense relief. "Most of Danzo's reinforcements are fleeing." "Retreating," Danzo corrected. "They are good men and would have fought to the death if I asked it of them, but there is no point in throwing their lives away by putting them against you." "Good, no more hiding behind others, no more tricks. You'll have to fight me yourself as it should be," Sasuke said. "Now what would be the point of that?" Danzo asked. "We both know I'd lose any fair fight against you." Despite that, he had already unsealed his arm again. Sasuke was admittedly a little thrown off by that admission. "Do not think I'll spare you just by playing up the defenseless old man angle. Too many have died because of you, much more than even my clan. I am not expecting, nor am I in need of your mercy. I am simply saying that it is not in my nature to engage in a conflict I don't think I can win." Sasuke shot forward, his sword clashing against Danzo's kunai. As their weapons were locked, Sasuke's Susanoo again appeared and grabbed Danzo and immediately crushed his body in its grip. Sasuke knew this wasn't the end. If every Sharingan he had represented an extra life, he'd need to kill him at least 10 more times. That included the Sharingan Danzo had in his eye. "You know, this is very fitting. A single death wouldn't be nearly enough for you to pay for all you've done." There was the sound of Danzo giving a small chuckle that echoed through the forest. "They say I am a man without scruples. That there is nothing I wouldn't do." Sasuke looked to Hinata, and she nodded and gestures. She knew where he was hiding. "But while it is true that there is nothing I wouldn't do for my home, there are still things I'd rather not have done, and rather not do. But your actions as well as those of Naruto Uzumaki have driven me into this corner." "Hiding is pointless," Sasuke said, and his Susanoo knocked and loosed another arrow. "His corpse disappeared again," Hinata said. 9 more lives then. Suddenly there was an unnatural chill in the air. For months I worried that I had led the Leaf Village to its doom. With Naruto's defection, we no longer had a way to fight the war in the way I had intended. I desperately needed a new plan. I eventually found it in a scroll written by my old mentor, the great Tobirama Senju. He's doing something, Hinata said, and she again directed him towards the Kage's location, and another arrow soon took away another one of Danzo's lives. Danzo ignored his death and continued. He was not nearly as naive as his brother. He knew that Konoha would face many threats in the future, and so created a weapon. A weapon to be used as a last resort in case the survival of the Leaf Village was at stake. I have judged that to be the case. Show yourself, coward! Incredibly, Danzo did so, and he was making a hand sign. Edo Tensei, Impure World Resurrection. Dozens of coffins appeared all around them. It can't be, Sasuke thought. He had thought that was one of Orochimaru's jutsus. Hinata, with her Byakugan, was the first to realize just who Danzo was trying to summon. In a panic, she made hand signs and destroyed 2 of the coffins with sharp spears of lightning shooting from her fingertips. But it was just 2 out of dozens. Behold, Sasuke, Danzo said, and Hinata appeared at her lover's side, grabbing his hand, giving the support she suspected he'd need. Behold the kin that you tried so hard to avenge. And out of the coffins appeared what seemed to be the entire Uchiha clan. Hinata and Sasuke were surrounded by dozens upon dozens of red spinning Sharingan eyes looking at them. In unison they all made hand signs and launched a stream of fire at the couple. Sasuke Susanoo appeared to protect them both. The skeleton was growing larger and it was growing flesh, completing itself and responding to its creator's emotions. You dare? Sasuke said, wide-eyed. Do you truly hate us this much? Hate you? No, Sasuke. Unlike you, hatred has never been my motivation. This is simply my duty. Nothing more, nothing less. Sasuke again tried to skewer Danzo with an arrow, but Sasuke's own mother jumped in the way of the attack. Her body was nearly torn to shreds, but it started to regenerate almost immediately. The true marvel, isn't it? Danzo says. These bodies are infinitely regenerating, unstoppable and relentless. It's true, Hinata said. She was tightly squeezing Sasuke's hand in the hopes it would prevent him from completely losing it. Their chakras don't seem to be diminishing. Sasuke looked at her, and seeing her brought him some clarity. I have to make sure we both make it out of here alive, he thought. And kill Danzo, couldn't forget about that. Sasuke tried out his Amaterasu on someone he wasn't too attached to. A distant cousin of his who he didn't remember much about, except that he used to tell bad jokes at the expense of his Genin team that only he found funny. It did work. When the body had been completely consumed, it didn't regenerate. That said, Amaterasu was too costly for him to use on every member of the Uchiha clan individually, if he could even bring himself to do it. But he needed to defeat all of them. Sasuke next sent his black flames at Danzo himself, intending to burn anything that got between it and him, even if it were his own parents and grandparents. Wind-style vacuum wall, Danzo called, and their techniques met. The black flames of the Amaterasu were the strongest fire jutsus in existence. They could burn almost anything. But what they couldn't burn was nothing, and so Danzo's technique was an effective counter. And all the while, the continuous stream of flames sent from the whole Uchiha clan trying to cook them alive hadn't let up. Even through the Susanoo, things were becoming uncomfortably warm. Itachi managed to kill all these people in a single night when he was 13. Surely I'm stronger now than he was at that age, Sasuke thought. Sasuke tried to bulldoze forward, using the Susanoo as a tank to get closer to Danzo. I found, young Sasuke, that summoning truly strong shinobi takes a bit more effort. Please, forgive this one's late entry. Danzo again made hand signs, and another single coffin appeared between them. And out of it strode the reanimated Itachi himself. At that point, Hinata and even Sasuke started to seriously doubt whether they could pull this off. Itachi's Susanoo appeared in direct opposition to Sasuke's. Sasuke, I see that even in death, I am not free of you, Itachi tried. Cannon, brother! I know that me killing you was always a part of your plan. I know everything. Then Madara told you, did he? Itachi asked. Are you dancing to his tune now? I am done letting others define my destiny. I am here by my will alone. And your will dictates that you continue to be a rogue ninja. Itachi shook his head. Regardless, you are not strong enough to face the forces arrayed against you. Not yet. Sasuke, I think we should go, Hinata tried. But Sasuke was too angry to listen. He sent his black flames at Itachi, who actually cut the flames with the Totsuka blade and used it to guide the flames into the gourd he carried to seal them away. Susanoo arrows were launched and they bounced off the Yara mirror. Sasuke's eyes were bleeding heavily from using his Mangekyo ability so often, so rapidly. Run, Sasuke heard Fugaku Uchiha say. It was the first time he'd heard his father's voice in years. Speaking seemed to cost him a tremendous amount of effort. It seemed that only Itachi had been given permission to talk as much as he wished to. Run. Don't let us corner you here, Sasuke. Escape, please. Fugaku drew in a deep breath and spewed out more fire than all the rest of them had done combined. It was still something Sasuke Susanoo should be able to withstand. But then Danzo made hand signs and added his own regular Winjutsu to the attack. In a manner not unlike what Naruto had done with Sasuke when they melted Kimimaro. The two attacks on the borderline Kage-level shinobis combined into something truly monstrous that would have made even the real Mother Uchiha go, "You know what? That is a decent effort." Amaterasu! Sasuke used the only jutsu he had that could stand against this attack. As previously mentioned, the black flames could burn almost anything, even other fires oddly enough. But even still, the sheer volume of it, and the length of the technique since Fugaku couldn't run out of stamina and Danzo was still mostly fresh, it meant that Sasuke had to expend a huge amount of chakra himself to prevent he and Hinata from dying. When it was finally over because Danzo couldn't keep it up any longer, Sasuke collapsed to one knee, a hand covering his bleeding right Mangekyo. Sasuke, I have a plan, Hinata said, crouching beside him. As she hadn't done much but hide within Sasuke Susanoo, she had been given more time to think than Sasuke. But if it doesn't work, we really need to leave immediately. We can't keep this up. Hinata quietly told him what she needed from him, and he obliged. There had been more than a fire flying around at the same conditions as with his first fight against Itachi were again in place. He raised a hand, calling the lightning. I hope you don't think this will end it, Sasuke. You'll need even more power if you hope to make a difference here, Itachi said, and prepared to defend both himself and Danzo from Karin with the Yara mirror. Sasuke lowered his hand. The dragon made of lightning appeared in the sky, and at the same time, Hinata slammed her hands against the ground. Air-style mud wall! And using this very basic ninjutsu, Hinata proceeded to repair the chakra-suppressing seal. Both the links she had originally destroyed, as well as in other places that had been damaged due to the battle since. The funny thing about Karin was that it didn't actually require a lot of chakra to use once all the pieces were in place. You just needed a small bit to guide the power. But the same couldn't be said for Itachi Susanoo, which immediately disappeared as the lightning dragon fell down upon them, once again killing Danzo and nearly destroying Itachi's body completely. The key words being nearly, as Itachi did slowly start to regenerate. But that would take a minute, by which time all of this would have been over. The real plan, however, had been for the chakra suppression seal to make Danzo lose his ability to use Izanagi. Before, when the seal was up, Danzo had locked his arm away, suggesting that he couldn't use it while the seal was up. It was a near thing, but Danzo had done it. The pain had been excruciating, and Danzo had all but destroyed his own body by forcing the chakra to continue to flow against the resistance of the seal. But he knew that if he didn't, this would have been the end of him. He had managed to get Izanagi off, and all the damage, including what he had done to himself by overworking his chakra network, had been undone. But still, as he reappeared, he struggled to bind his arm away. The suppression seal was causing his artificial Hashirama cell-enhanced arm to melt away, and all of the Sharingans in the arm that were still open exploded, and there was no way for him to get them back. Sasuke and Hinata, meanwhile, were running. If canning didn't work, they'd resolve to use it as a distraction. Danzo used an explosive tag to destroy one of the mud walls that Hinata had created, lifting the suppression seal. "Half of them!" he yelled. Sasuke and Hinata had been prepared for the suppression seal, and so it hadn't momentarily crippled them as it had done to everyone else. But the seal had still meant that they hadn't been able to get far. They were tired and fleeing from numerous enemies that couldn't get tired. As the revived Uchiha clan took a single step to continue the pursuit, all of them suddenly froze up, as did Danzo. The old Kage looked down, at the ground, at his shadow. "So you were in cahoots with them after all," Danzo says. Shikamaru appeared from behind a tree where he had been hiding. He had left the agent tasked to follow his movements restrained back at their camp. "No, I wasn't. But I could guess what would happen when you asked me to design a trap made to deal with someone with overwhelming power, and the ability to perfectly survey the battlefield to see through traps. In truth, I haven't spoken to Hinata and Sasuke in years. Ungrateful bastards." "Yet you do this for them?" Danzo asked, not understanding Shikamaru's motivations then. "They who abandoned you and didn't spare you another thought in years." Shikamaru looked at Danzo with his head cocked. "It really is true then. You do not understand the will of fire at all." And he released the binding. He couldn't hold so many powerful individuals for that long. But he had given Sasuke and Hinata enough time to hide their tracks, hopefully. "Take him into custody," Danzo said, more for Shikamaru's benefit. The commands to the reanimated Uchiha he now commanded was a mental thing. Shikamaru didn't resist. "He probably knows I can't kill him," Danzo thought. Doing so would cause 3 of Konoha's major clans to rebel or just leave. Danzo had both his reanimations as well as his regular forces search the area, but Hinata and Sasuke were nowhere to be found. Still, Danzo found himself optimistic when he returned to Konoha. The impure world resurrection had worked, and with it, he now had the tools he needed to save the Leaf Village. Not even an hour after he returned, the Hokage's advisors, Koharu and Hamura, demanded to speak to him. "What is this we are hearing about imprisoning Shikamaru Nara? Do you have any idea of the storm this will cause?" "He committed treason. I can't ignore that. But clans will just have to see reason. And if not, we can keep the Nara as a hostage to ensure the others don't make trouble." "Is this really what we've been reduced to, Danzo?" Koharu asked. "Taking hostages to secure the obedience of what used to be our most loyal clans?" "I can't do nothing either. Showing favoritism by ignoring treason just because the criminal is politically important creates an entirely new set of problems. Imprisonment with comfortable accommodations is as lenient as I dare be." "We understand a difficult choice, but that you had to make it at all says enough. This is yet another important ninja whose loyalty you have lost." "We'd insist you'd step down in favor of Uzumaki Naruto, but your actions have made that impossible. And it was clear they weren't happy in the role he played that led to their Jinchuriki's downfall. I understand you've lost a lot of faith in me, but our fortune is about to turn. I figured out Tobirama's jutsu, his last trump card in case the Hidden Leaf Village faced a threat it couldn't survive any other way." "Yes, we've heard about your revived Uchiha clan," Hamura said. "The first of many," Danzo says. "A jutsu like that must have a heavy price to pay." "Every reanimation requires a human sacrifice," Danzo admitted. "You'd be sacrificing our own people for this army." Danzo looked genuinely horrified. "Never! It's my duty to protect the citizens of Konoha and Fire Country." The advisors let out relief breaths. "No, sacrifices will of course be taken from the people of the other nations." Koharu and Hamura exchanged glances. "That is good to hear." "We are pleased you haven't forgotten your duty." Danzo nodded and excused himself. He had a lot of work to do. When he was gone, the advisors looked at each other and said, "He's lost it." And they went somewhere where there was less of a chance they'd be overheard or discovered. It seems they had some treasons of themselves to plan. The next thing Danzo did after retreating to his office was to get the truth out of Itachi. "Were you the one who told Sasuke the truth?" He didn't think so, but he had to be sure. Danzo enforced his question with the Edo Tensei's control, making sure Itachi couldn't lie. "No, I didn't," Itachi answered truthfully. "I am almost certain it was the Masked Man. Does he remain a threat?" "I've heard nothing about him being killed, so I suspect so." "And the Jinchuriki?" "At this point, only the A-Tails remains free, I think." Itachi's eyes widened in alarm. "Uzumaki has fallen? Then I must go to the Cloud Village at once." "You will," Danzo said. "But not alone. You will have an army at your side. My Edo Tenseis are powerful, but I'd feel more secure if there were a couple amongst them that served out of their own free will, to act as generals. You are ideal for this." Itachi considered this. "So long as you continue to honor our deal, I will continue to serve Konoha to the best of my abilities." "Our deal? You mean about Sasuke?" Danzo looked exasperated. "The boy has made his choices, Itachi. You cannot expect me to keep him safe when he's coming to kill me." "Of course not. I am not unreasonable. All I ask is that if Sasuke decides to return to being a Konoha ninja, you'll let him." "He's not going to, Itachi." Danzo sounded almost sympathetic. "Your brother isn't like you." "I still have faith he'll do the right thing in the end," Itachi said. "I do not need you to believe me. Only your word that if Sasuke chooses to return, you'll let him, and not punish him for any previous infractions." "You are selling your services for nothing, Itachi," Danzo said. "But I agree to these terms. Believe it or not, I would have loved nothing more for your brother to be a loyal leaf ninja. His strength would have been a great asset." "Thank you, Lord Hokage." Meanwhile, Sasuke and Hinata were hiding somewhere in the Land of Fire, in one of Orochimaru's now abandoned laboratories. "Hinata, you are qualified to make an eye transplant, correct?" Sasuke asked. "I am," Hinata said. "He wants me to give you Itachi's eyes." "I was reluctant to do this. I still am. But I don't have a choice. I thought Danzo was less of a threat than Orochimaru or Itachi. I was wrong. He needs to be stopped. Naruto is gone, so I might be the only one who can do this. This now goes beyond avenging my clan even." Though by his expression, Hinata could tell Sasuke was still livid about that. At this point, Danzo might be as much of a danger to the world as the Akatsuki. I need to obtain even more power and put a stop to this now before things get worse. "Alright, just unseal Itachi's eyes, lie down, and I'll get started." Hinata finished the operation within the hour. Then it took another 2 hours for Sasuke's eyes to adjust, during which he had to wear a blindfold. When Sasuke took off the blindfold, Hinata was in awe of the power radiating from Sasuke. "This is the power of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan." She thought it was beyond Naruto's Sage Mode even. Sasuke tried out his new power, and Hinata saw his Sharingan morph into its new shape. A few seconds after Sasuke's new eyes made contact with Hinata's, however, Hinata's body spasmed. Her back bent backwards, and her mouth was forced wide open. And then, Itachi's last trap for Sasuke emerged. The trap he had placed within Hinata when she was his captive, on the off chance Sasuke managed to save her. A trap that was programmed to activate as soon as Hinata's eyes made contact with what used to be Itachi's eyes. A crow emerged from Hinata's mouth and instantly casted the absolute Kotamatsu Kami on Sasuke, forcing him to protect and serve Konoha. As soon as it did, Sasuke started to move out of the cave. When Hinata tried to stop him, Sasuke backhanded her and she was slammed against the wall. Sasuke started to sprint across the tree branches. Damn you, Itachi! He screamed, not pausing in his stride towards Konoha, where he would offer up his allegiance to Danzo. And that's the end of part 40. Now X out.